Lydia Dietz, now a paranormal talk show host, returns to her haunted hometown after her father's mysterious death, only to confront her old nemesis Beetlejuice. However, she has to face a new looming threat to save her daughter from danger. Spoilers ahead. The movie starts with Lydia Dietz filming her paranormal talk show called Ghost House. In the show, she interviews people who say they have ghosts in their homes because she has the ability to see them. While filming the episode, she gets scared when she sees Beetlejuice sitting in the audience. This caused her to walk out of the show. Lydia talks to her boyfriend and manager, Rory. She tries to take some pills to calm down because she's still scared of Beetlejuice, but Rory throws most of them away. Lydia convinces him she needs them to get through the day, so Rory retrieves 2 pills from the trash can, and they both take them. Then, Lydia gets lots of texts and calls from her stepmother, Delia, who is upset about some bad news. Lydia visits Delia at her art gallery because Delia is now a famous artist. Delia tells Lydia that her father, Charles, has died. He survived a plane crash into the ocean but was eaten by a shark. They start planning to go back to Winter River for Charles's funeral. A graffiti artist, angry that Delia cancelled their appointment, left the building and died in an accident. He ended up in the afterlife where a ghost janitor gave him directions. This janitor accidentally brought a woman named Dolores back to life. Dolores put herself back together using staples and then grabbed the janitor, demanding to know where Beetlejuice was. When the janitor couldn't answer, Dolores sucked out his soul, leaving him as an empty skin bag. Meanwhile, Beetlejuice is working with a group of guys who all have shrunken heads. Lydia and Delia go to find Lydia's daughter, Astrid, who is teased at school for being weird and feels neglected by her mom, who spends more time with ghosts. At Astrid's school, Delia dramatically announces Charles's death. Astrid is shocked about her grandfather, but argues with Lydia because they never talked about her dad Richard's death in South America. Beetlejuice is called by Wolf Jackson, a ghost detective who used to be an actor when he was alive. Jackson questions Beetlejuice about Dolores, making him nervous. At first, Beetlejuice denies knowing her, but at the crime scene, they realize Beetlejuice is her target. Jackson advises him to lay low. Meanwhile, at the funeral, Astrid is upset with Lydia because, although Lydia can see ghosts for her TV show, she can't see Astrid's father. In the afterlife, Charles visits a laundry shop, confused about his whereabouts, but the shop owner dismisses him because the shop is closed. After Charles leaves, Dolores appears, sucks out the shop owner's soul, and leaves him in the same state as the janitor. She then takes a wedding dress and changes it to black. In Beetlejuice's office, he explains to the shrunken-headed guys in a dramatic way that Dolores was his wife when he was a grave robber. She led a soul-sucking cult and aims for immortality, but that requires Beetlejuice's life and soul. She tricked him into drinking poison, but before he died, he cut her into pieces. Now, he knows she's seeking revenge. When Beetlejuice finds out Lydia is going back to Winter River, he sees it as his chance to escape. After the funeral, everyone gathered at Lydia's old house on the hill. Rory proposes to Lydia in front of everyone, even though she clearly doesn't want to say yes, and Astrid openly shows her dislike for Rory. Lydia reluctantly agrees to the proposal. Upset, Astrid goes for a bike ride, crashes into a tree, and meets a boy named Jeremy Fraser in his treehouse. They sit and talk for a bit, with Astrid mentioning that Lydia is her mom. Dolores continues her search for Beetlejuice, inflicting fear along the way, while Jackson investigates another crime scene and wonders why he became a cop in the afterlife. On the other hand, Beetlejuice is getting ready by blocking the door and using Bob as a decoy. Later, Astrid goes into the attic and finds an old town model and a pamphlet that tries to trick her into saying Beetlejuice's name. Astrid finds a box of her dad's things with a photo album inside. Lydia comes in and starts talking about her dad, but when Lydia sees the pamphlet, Astrid asks about Beetlejuice, making Lydia panic. She warns Astrid never to say Beetlejuice's name 3 times because terrible things will happen. Lydia then tells Astrid she's not allowed to return to the attic. Feeling upset, Astrid goes to Jeremy's house, where he introduces her to his parents, but they are too busy to pay attention to her. In Jeremy's room, Astrid discovers he has a handbook for the recently deceased, which he says he found at a yard sale in town. They talked about her dad's accident and how her mom can't see his ghost, which is why Astrid thinks her mom is a fraud. They decide to hang out at his place on Halloween night. Back at Lydia's old house, while talking to Rory about the wedding, Lydia's phone suddenly blows up with notifications about Beetlejuice. Panicked, she rushes to the attic and shouts at the old town model, demanding Beetlejuice to stay out of her life. However, when Rory comes in, he doesn't believe Lydia's story about Beetlejuice. Trying to help, he says Beetlejuice's name 3 times, thinking nothing will happen. This transports him and Lydia into the model, where she confronts Beetlejuice again. Beetlejuice frightens Rory with his nightmare face before Lydia sends them both back home. After this, Lydia wants to leave town right away, but Astrid asks her to stay a bit longer because she has plans with Jeremy. Hours before the wedding, Astrid asks Lydia to drive her to Jeremy's house to hang out. Upstairs in his room, Jeremy charms Astrid, and they share a kiss, causing them to float. Jeremy then reveals he's a ghost who died falling out of the treehouse. He asks Astrid to help bring him back to life, promising she can see her father again. Meanwhile, Lydia meets with a real estate agent who mentions Jeremy's house as a murder house because Jeremy killed his parents 23 years ago and died before the police could arrest him. Realizing Astrid is in danger, Lydia rushes to Jeremy's house. Jeremy gets Astrid to read a spell from the handbook, opening a portal to the afterlife. Lydia arrives too late, and Astrid follows Jeremy through the portal. Desperate, Lydia goes back to the house and summons Beetlejuice. He is delighted to be back, but agrees to help save Astrid only if Lydia marries him to escape Dolores. Lydia agrees. Beetlejuice opens a back door to the afterlife and leaves a shrunken head guy, Bob, as his decoy. In the backyard, Delia performs a ritual to honor Charles using 2 snakes she believed were defanged. She is proven wrong when both snakes bite her neck, causing her to collapse and die and be sent to the afterlife. While practicing his lines, Jackson is informed that a living person has crossed the afterlife. He then gathers the ghoul squad to search for Beetlejuice and Lydia. At the immigration area, Jeremy confesses to Astrid that he tricked her into reciting the chant, which means she agreed to give up her life for his. He leaves her to board the soul train while he gets his pass stamped to make his cross to the living final. However, Richard spots Astrid and runs after her. Lydia arrives just in time to stop Astrid from getting on the train, but as they escape through an emergency exit, they find themselves on one of Saturn's moons, home to the sandworm. The monster chases them, but Richard pulls them to safety. Dolores keeps killing ghosts by sucking out their souls. She arrives at Beetlejuice's department but finds it empty. Jackson is questioning Bob, who was dressed like Beetlejuice, but after Jackson leaves, Dolores finds Bob and sucks out his soul too. Lydia and Astrid reunite with Richard and quickly bond before rushing to stop Jeremy from getting his pass stamped. They arrive just as Jeremy is gloating that they're too late. But the ghost who stamped his pass was actually Beetlejuice, and the stamp says "shit out of luck." Beetlejuice then pulls a lever, sending Jeremy down to hell through a trapdoor. Delia finds herself in the afterlife's waiting room and struggles to accept that she is dead. Desperate to return to life, she calls on Beetlejuice for help, and he eagerly agrees to assist her. Richard leads Lydia and Astrid to an exit, and after saying goodbye to Richard, Lydia and Astrid come back to the living world. Astrid apologizes to Lydia for her past behavior, and the two reconciled. They suddenly remember that the wedding is happening right now, and Lydia decides to go through with it. When they arrive at the chapel, Beetlejuice shows up with Delia to interrupt the ceremony. He injects Rory with a truth serum, making him admit that he never believed in Lydia's paranormal abilities and that he was only marrying her for her money. Beetlejuice gives Lydia a glove, allowing her to punch Rory across the room. Beetlejuice tries to make his and Lydia's wedding happen by trapping the guests inside their phones. He performs an over-the-top musical number, even freezing Jackson and his ghoul cops. Dolores arrives to interrupt. Meanwhile, Astrid uses the handbook to find a loophole and draw a door to Saturn's moon, summoning the sandworm. Beetlejuice dodges the sandworm, which ends up eating Rory and Dolores. Astrid discovers that the marriage contract is void because Beetlejuice brought Lydia into the afterlife while she was still alive. Lydia says his name 3 times, causing him to inflate like a balloon and pop. Jackson unfreezes and tells Lydia and Astrid that he must take Delia back to the afterlife. Delia says goodbye, promising to haunt them until she's ready to move on, and they reaffirm their love for her. In the afterlife, Delia reunites with Charles, or what's left of him. Later, Lydia records a final episode of Ghost House to retire and spend more time with Astrid. They book a flight to Transylvania, where Astrid is drawn to a boy dressed like Dracula. The scene shifts to their wedding and Astrid giving birth, but she delivers a monstrous Beetlejuice baby that kills the doctors. Lydia wakes up from this nightmare, only to see Beetlejuice beside her. She wakes up again, realizing she isn't free from him yet. And the movie ends here. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Share your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned for our next movie.